Mrs. M. Priyadarshini, ME MBA, is doing PhD, is currently working as teaching fellow in the Department of IST, Anna University, Chennai. She completed a Master's in Software Engineering from Anna University. She has about 10 years of experience in handling courses for UG and PG. She was serving as Technical Evangelist for Corporate over 4 years in Java Enterprise Technologies, Software Engineering, Databases, OOAD, and Design Patterns. She is proficient in handling IT projects as well into concept development for enterprises. She is doing a research in the area of web services security. Her other areas of interest include software engineering, OOAD, databases, enterprise technologies, and service-oriented architecture. She holds many journal publications and conference proceedings in her research area.
Welcome to UGC lecture series in Computer Science, Java Part 3. First, we'll have a recap of what we have seen already in Part 2. So, we have seen what are the various control structures, for loop and decision making, how to install your Java software, setting the path and class path. As well as we have also seen how to compile and execute a Java program. So, next we'll move on into today's session. So, here we'll have an introduction about what is a class, how to create an object from the class, what do you mean by a constructor, your variable scope, and then how to use this keyword, what is the purpose of this keyword, and then method overloading. So, a class can be defined as a template, blueprint that describe the behaviors, states that object of its type support. Class can also be defined as collection of objects sharing similar properties and behavior. So, example, person, employee, vehicle, etc. What is a class? So, whenever you look into any particular set of objects available before you, we will try to identify a set of objects sharing similar properties and behavior. So, for example, if I enter into a room, a classroom, so then I can look into a set of students. So, among the students, I can look into set of girls, set of boys. Then I can look into furnitures available. So, then I can look into blackboard. So, each of these. So, how do I identify a set of? So, it means that having same properties as well as behavior. So, then after that I classify them into a class. So, it means that a set of objects which share same set of properties and behavior are classified, and then they are given a template, and then we define that as a class. So, a class could be defined in such a way that it's a template or blueprint for which you can create many objects. So, for a particular class we can create many objects. So, if I say a person as a class, so I may have n number of persons. Similarly, if I have an employee, I may have n number of employees. So, employee 1 is an instance of your class, employee 2 is an instance of the class. So, it means that whenever I say employee, all employees will have a same set of properties as well as behavior. So, what is behavior? Behavior is nothing but the method or functionality of a particular class. So, here is an example, public, class. So, I have given person here. So, private, and then private is nothing but the access specifier that we have seen already. String is a data type and name is the variable name. So, here you can notice that string start with S, that is uppercase S. So, it means that it is a class. So, string is of type class. Next, I have a private int and then age. Next, we have private character sex. Next is public void and working. So, this is a method. Here we didn't give any definition. So, just it's a blank definition. So, here you can see that we have a public class. The access specifier is public. It could be accessed from anywhere. And then I have given the variables to be the private. So, it means that whenever I have a class, and whenever I create objects of the class, so all these variables could not be accessed directly, and there should be some methods, some public methods to access these variables. So this is what is a pure object mean. So next we will look into what is an object. So object is any real world entity. So an object is also termed as instance of a class. So objects have ID, state and behaviors. Example, a person has a state, name, age and sex, as well as behaviors, walking, talking, eating, etc. So this is how an object could be created. So now what is an object? So object is any real world entity. So and then whenever I create a class, whenever I write a class, we can create many objects. So here you can see that person is a class for which I have created an object called P. Similarly, I can create n number of persons. Whenever I say object, then it means that we have to look into object references. So obtaining objects of a class is a two-step process. One is, first you must declare a variable of the class type. So we have in the previous example here we have seen that person. So here we have a variable that is being declared, that is P is an object of type person. This variable does not define an object. Instead, it is simply a variable that can refer to an object or simply an object reference. So whereas in other programming languages, whenever we give a particular declaration of a variable, it means that a space is being allocated, whereas it's not in this case of Java. So it means that whenever I declare an object of a particular type, it means that we are trying to create an object reference. So we have not allocated any space for this particular type of object. So the second step is you must acquire an actual physical copy of the object. So assign the address or reference of that object to that variable. So we would have seen memory allocation, dynamic memory allocation in programming languages like C and C++. So similar to that, here also you can do this using the new operator. So new operator is used to create a memory space, allocate memory to a particular object, and then this could very well be assigned to a particular object name. So here it's a two-step process as already told. So we try to declare an object of type person, and then we are trying to allocate memory for this particular class and then assign that to this object reference. So you can see that here private string name, it's a string, it's again an object. Here name is an object. Age is a primitive data type. Character, it's a primitive data type. Again, we also have a method. The entire space that need to be occupied for one object creation will be created here using this operator called new. After creation of this, we will try to assign this particular value to a variable that is declared to be of that particular object type. Instead of doing this in two different statements, you can very well do this in a single statement also. Person P is equal to new person. So it means that we are trying to declare an object of type person and then we are trying to allocate the memory both in the same particular statement. Now just we will see what is a class and object again. A class is nothing but a template, a blueprint, and the instance of the class is said to be an object. So I think now we are clear with what is a class and an object. Next we look into what do you mean by modifiers. So modifiers are nothing but keywords that you add to those definitions to change their meanings. So even you can say this gives visibility for a particular variable or a method or a class. The Java language has a wide variety of modifiers including the following. So Java access modifier, and there are also a few non-access modifier. Java access modifiers. Java provides a number of access modifiers to set access levels of classes, variables, methods and constructor. So three access levels are package, private and public. So by default you need not represent a keyword called package in order to say the specifier is of type package, and private is nothing but your particular variable or your particular class is visible. So for example, if I have a class and I say it as a private, so it means that nobody else can access that. So your private class doesn't make any sense. Whereas if I have a variable, that variable could be specified as private. So if you take a definition of an object, so whenever I have a pure object, the pure object should have all the variables to be private and all the methods should be public. It means that an object should be accessed by all the other programs. In that case, I keep my variables to be private and then I try to make that particular object's variable available only to the methods of that particular object. So for example, if I have a particular variable being defined as private, so I say name to be private, so it means that I cannot directly use p1.name and access this from elsewhere. So and then if I say public, then I can directly access that. If I have declared my name as public, so it means that I can directly give my p1 dot and then I can use my variable, public variable, that is p1 dot name. Whereas in this case I need to explicitly give a method. So next we have a set of non-access modifier. So this is not going to restrict the visibility or access of a particular variable or method, whereas here it gives a further specification. So here you can look into final modifier. So final modifier for finalizing the implementation of classes, methods and variables. The static modifier for creating class methods and variables. Abstract modifier for creating an abstract class and methods. The synchronized and volatile modifiers which are used for threads. So now first we look into what is a final modifier. So you know final is a final value which could not be changed. So for referring to a constant value, we normally use a keyword called final. So whenever I declare a variable with a modifier final, so it means that the value is constant and could not be changed. So next we look into static modifier. So what is static? So already we have seen that your public static void main is your main prototype of your main method. Static is an access modifier which specifies that this particular variable or a block will be created even before creation of the class, and the value of this static modifier could be changed by any of the objects of that particular class. So for example, if I have a class and then I have a variable which is being declared as static, so in that case what we have is that particular variable is common to all the objects of the class. So anyway, we will see that in detail. The abstract modifier, it means that your method is not clearly defined at the point when it is created. So if it is an abstract class, it means that all the methods of the class are not clearly defined. So it means that there will be some methods which are abstract. Anyway, we will also look into abstract class later on. Synchronize. Synchronize is used for our multi-threading environment. So this will help us to synchronize the threads. So whenever we do multi-threading, we will try to synchronize one thread with another thread using this keyword. Next is volatile modifier. So you know what is the difference between volatile and non-volatile. Whenever you create a class and an object, first method which need to be written is the constructor. So the method, constructor method, has same name as that of the class. So your constructor method doesn't have any return type. It's used to initialize the instance variables. You can have default and parameterized constructor. Name of your constructor. So constructor is a method which will be returned. So we will have a look at this sample. So here we have public, class, person. So all these we have already seen. Now we have a constructor here. So public and then the same name as that of your class. So this is a constructor without any arguments. and here we don't have any definition as such. So next we have another constructor with a parameter called string name. So here we are trying to assign a variable called name to the variable of this particular class. Next is public person. We have two variables here. One is name, another one is age. We have three constructors here. One is without any arguments, one is with one argument, and another one with two arguments. So if you are not writing a constructor, by default a default constructor will be called, so which will assign the default values to this particular variable. Now we will have a short break and continue further about constructors and then how your destructors are called, garbage collection, etc. Welcome back after the break. So now we will proceed with the constructors and how an object is created and so on. So here you can see that we have already seen that there are three constructors here. One is no argument constructor, a constructor with argument, and with argument with one single argument with two arguments. So based on the requirements, user can call any of these constructors, but anyway by default we will have a default constructor. So this default constructor will assign default values to all the variables. So here you can see that we have another method also, public void display, which displays the details of a person. So here we have created three variables. So here variables is nothing but object. So we have three objects being created for this class. One will use the no argument constructor, one will use single argument constructor, and the other one will use the two argument constructor. So here in first case we have not written any implementation for this particular initialization. So constructor is for initialization anyway. So we have not initialized any values here, whereas in case of these two constructors, so here we have given the name as John and here we have given the name as John and then we have assigned the name. So here whenever I try to display these objects, so this display method will be called, so the person name, so we don't have any name being assigned here, whereas here we have assigned the name, and then for P3 also, for P3 object also we have assigned a name. So now name and age will get displayed for this P3. Here only name will get displayed for P2 and age will be 0. And then in case of P1 dot display, we will have age to be displayed as 0 and we will have a blank value for your person name. So it means that user can call any of the constructor as per their requirement. So whatever they try to initialize, based on that initialization they can call any of the constructor. So here whenever I try to create an object, the constructor is called. So we have seen that method has same name as the class, no return type is there, it's used to initialize the instant variables, and you can have default constructor and then even you can write few parameterized constructors. So then we look into what is a destructor. So in programming languages like C++, we have set of destructors being written. So for example, if I create an object, there will be a corresponding destructor that will be written, whereas here we don't have separate destructor, no separate destructor is needed. Unused objects are collected periodically, that is using your garbage collector. So it means that whenever you have an object being created and if you need that object no more, there is no need for us to explicitly call a destructor. So at the end of the program execution, your object will be garbage collected by the garbage collector. So it means that periodically your garbage collector will collect all the unused objects that is prevailing in the memory. So for a particular class, we have to write constructors, whereas it's not necessary for us to write the destructor. So in case of constructor, it's not mandatory that you should write a constructor. So there may be default constructor which could be called, or you can have various types of constructors. Here you can even say that your constructors are overloaded. So, we have many constructor, as per the need we can call the constructor. So, next we look into scope of the variables. So, variables can be declared anywhere inside the class. Based on the location, variables can be categorized into three types. It may be local variable, instance variable and class variable. So, local variables are nothing but variables defined inside method, constructor or blocks. The variable will be declared and initialized within the method, and the variable will be destroyed when the method has completed. So, it means that whenever you try to declare a variable within your method or inside any block, that will be local to that particular block or it will be local to that particular method. So, next is instance variables. So, instance variables are variables within a class but outside any method. These variables are instantiated when the class is loaded. Instance variable can be accessed from inside any method, constructor or blocks of that particular class. So, it means that your instance variables are the variables that belong to the objects, that is instances. So, here your instance variables are declared outside any of the method. If it is declared inside the method, we have seen that it is a local variable. Whereas here instance variables are declared outside the method but within the class definition. So, inside your class definition you have a set of variables. These variables are called instance variables. So, this will be created one copy for each of the object that you create. So, we have created P1. So, for one P1 we will have name, age, all the other properties. Now, we will look into class variables. So, class variables are variables declared within a class outside any method with static keyword. So, whenever I say class variables, so there will be only one copy of the variable for the entire class. So, for example, if I have a person class, so number of persons is a variable which will be common to number of objects that is available. So, if I create 10 objects of person class, so 10 persons, so then I can assign the value to be 10 for number of persons. So, in that case I can keep that particular value as common value to the class. So, that is what is static variable. So, I can define that as a static variable. So, it means that a static keyword in the class variable is used to refer the class variables, which is only one copy for a particular class. So, here you can see that public class person, string name, age, sex, and then we have a static value, that is a boolean value, can smile. So, this is a static value or class variable. So, it means that I will not have this boolean value for all the objects that I create. There will be only one copy. So, if I want to access this variable, I have to access this using my class name. So, for example, if I want to access name, so I have to give p1.name. If I want to access age, p1.age. Whereas, if I want to access can smile, so I have to use person.canSmile. So, it means that I have to use my class name and then the variable name, because it is not a variable which is for an instance, it is a variable for the class. So, how do I access it? Access with the name of the class. So, class name dot the variable name I can use in order to access a static variable. Whereas, I can use this can smile in any of my methods. I can use this in any of my methods. So, here you can see that these are local variables. So, your n is a local variable. Here the person p is a local variable. So, this is a local variable to the main method. So, here this is a local variable n, whereas these are instance variables and this is the static variable. So, these are various variable scopes. So, this will be available whenever an object is created until that particular object is garbage collected. This variable will be there till end of your class, whereas these variables will be there only when your constructor is run. So next we will move into this keyword. So this refers to the current object. Here you can see that we have a class. So here a parameterized constructor. Here inside this parameterized constructor we have this dot name is equal to name. You can see that here the variable name in this particular set of arguments and in this particular instant variable is same. So here we have used this keyword in order to discriminate whether this particular variable is the local variable from the parameter or a variable which belongs to the instance. So it means that the current instance is nothing but a current object. So this dot name means that you are accessing the instance variables. This dot age, it means that you are trying to access the instant variable. Now here I can also use this keyword in order to access a particular method of the current object. So you can see that I have a constructor with two arguments here. So name and age, whereas here I have a constructor with name, age and sex. So in this case I can even call this particular constructor here using the keyword called this. It means that this refers to the current object. So now I say this dot sex is equal to yes. So s is the value which is given by the parameter and now it has been saved into this particular object, into the current object. So next we will see what is method overloading. So method overloading is nothing but you are using the same name to perform different actions depending on the parameters. So even you can use the name static polymorphism. Polymorphism means that particular method, okay, has 2 or 3 different implementation. So many forms. So I have methods differentiated with a list of parameters. So you can see here public class test. I have a draw method with one single variable, the same method with the same function prototype, whereas I have changed the list of parameters. So here I have 2 parameters. So this draw will have only one parameter, whereas this draw has 2 parameters. So whenever I call this from my main, so I have created an instance of this test class and then I am trying to call the draw method. So here whenever I call draw, so I have given only one single variable, so it means that this method will be called. Here I have given 2 variables, so the second method will be called. So it means that this method draw is overloaded. So it has 2 different implementations. So this deciding of this polymorphism is at the static level. So it means that whenever I write a program, whenever I do the compilation process, at that point of time itself I decide this particular objects, this particular method need to be called. That is why it is said to be static polymorphism. So it means that the same method in 2 different forms, that is 2 different implementations. So now we will have a look on the summary. We have a set of classes, objects in the real world. So that is represented as a template. So next is constructors. So constructors are nothing but the methods which are used to initialize your object. So whenever I create an object, I use constructor in order to initialize. Next is we have also seen the scope of the variables. So scope of the variables, we have seen what is instance variable, what is class variable or static variable, and then we have seen the local variables. Next we have also seen how this keyword could be used, and then we have seen method overloading. So the other name for method overloading is your static polymorphism. So from this session we could be able to clearly answer these set of questions. What is definition of a class? What is definition of an object? So you can give few examples of classes and objects, and we clearly know what is class variable, what is the use of this keyword, and then we also know what is method overloading or static polymorphism. So with this our session is over and we will proceed with inheritance, polymorphism, etc. in our next session.